Thanks very much. Yeah. Good morning. Thanks very much, Tom, and thanks to GovExec, Broadcom, our sponsors. It's great to be here this morning. Good morning to everyone. I just have the privilege of kicking things off on a great time, a great discussion. I think all of us, in terms of our various missions, we have no lack of challenges. I think I'm not going out on a limb to say we probably are all in a position where we're expected to do more with less, and that more is expected to be even better than what we've done in the past. All right, so that's the opportunity in terms of these technologies. I'm going to be talking about really the ABCDs of innovation and how emerging technologies are helping transform government or to modernize. I love the title of this of today's workshop. The A, of course, stands for artificial intelligence. I would actually assert I agree with our federal CIO, Suzette Kent, who's a gift to this country in terms of what she's been doing, her leadership, data strategy, and so on, as well as the folks in leading the AI campaign out of the White House. Have been very thankful for the forward-looking view that they have. But I agree with Suzette on the A. It really is best called augmented intelligence. If you really get philosophical about it, intelligence really isn't well defined by the philosophers, much less to make it artificial. Whatever that means, it's a phrase that has captured the imagination, sometimes for good or for bad. I'm a scientist, so I love the sci-fi movies. I love the Terminator series and so on, but usually what you think about the pop culture understanding of AI has to do with death bots and taking control over from things, right? We've had a half century of 2001 Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, which when it came out was a critical disaster. Nobody liked it, and then later on it's just gotten better with age. But what's the narrative of that, right? HAL 9000 comes to himself, determines to take over the humans, take over to control decisions, and then to start to off the crew and so on. It's a scary narrative. We understand that. We see the same pattern, by the way, in the Terminator series. We see it in the Westworld series. You see it in the Blade Runner series. It's the same pattern, right? We lose control, machines take over. Let me just give you a bottom line. Not going to happen. Okay? There is a lot of concern. It captures the imagination. I love going out. I have friends in Silicon Valley. They still think about general AI, but we are far from that. And I think really we need to focus on the opportunities of augmented intelligence or systems to help us do things. The B is blockchain. Okay, you hear a lot of hype around that. All of these, by the way, have a hype cycle, you know, using the Gartner methodology, which I agree with. AI, by the way, is something that's been through multiple hype cycles and winters and peaks and valleys in its history. But we are, I think, in a good way, we are experiencing a lot of power of AI today, and that could be useful for us here. But blockchain, digital ledger technologies, how do you keep an immutable ledger and distribute it and have it transparent and open? Came out of I guess a pseudonym, Satoshi Nakamoto, and it was about supporting cryptocurrencies, right, in an untrusted network. And there's a lot of power in that, although we've seen a lot of systems getting bitten by those things. So there is risk in terms of this, but there's also that opportunity in blockchain, and blockchain is another one that in the digital ledgers that again actually have a challenge in really having a well-defined understanding across things. But again, there's opportunity there. The C is cloud. I think we all know cloud ever since the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, uttered the word at one of the big conferences. It just has captured the imagination. It's gone up. It's become, or it's representative or emblematic of the success of Moore's Law, where we have computing is really commoditized and the storage therein. So now it's just out there in the cloud. But you can imagine from the federal perspective, we can't just say, well, our stuff is secure, it's out there in the cloud. We actually still have to answer the question that my parents had to answer when I was growing up. It's 11 o'clock, do you know where your kids are? Right? It's the same thing now as it's 11 o'clock, do you know where your data are? And are they secure? What are the standards for that security and things? And yet clouds are critical, without which technology that we are seeing being enabled in that. And then the D is data analytics. hear a lot about that. I think in one sense we've been doing data analysis for a very long time. I know there were some hands that weren't raised when the question was asked, do you deal with data on a day-to-day? I think the answer is all our hands should be raised because we deal with data. The key thing is what's the quality of the data, what's the rate of ingest of the data, what's the rate of understanding the data, and how does it help accomplish our mission. And that's where I think the convergence of these technologies is really one of the top line messages in terms of modernization. It's not just each one individually, it's convergence of that. And I think the power is in that convergence. We've seen more innovation and transformation in just the last couple decades than we've seen in world history in terms of these disruptive technologies. I think you all would agree. So in any case, all of these things are there. They're scary in one sense. They are certainly unsettling. They might break our business model, and yet I think there's hope for much of what we do in terms of rethinking our business model. That is the modernization opportunity to be able to do our job in thinking about things. Let me talk about GAO real quick. GAO is the Supreme Audit Institution of the United States. We are the Congress's largest agency. We have sister agency like the Congressional Budget Office that does the budget scoring. We have the Congressional Research Service and the Library of Congress that helps do things. But this is powerful because we have that key function, the watchdog as we're called, to help Congress with oversight. But when we really philosophically boil that down, what is oversight? It's helping Congress to ask questions, to do their scrutiny type function under Article 2 of the Constitution, where they're looking at the executive branch usually and scrutinizing the money, right? Where is the money going? How much money is being spent? Is the money being well spent, right? Why is this program broken or something? Why is it tripled, sextupled? 10x its budget of what it proposed to do. And so really when you fundamentally think about it, GAO is a question to answer conversion operation, okay? It's just saying Congress asks questions, can you tell me why this is broken? And GAO does all the work. And along that way, that path, the journey is as important as the destination, okay? There's a lot of opportunity at GAO for that process. And really in the data analytics case, what you're really trying to do is deal with the DIKW pyramid, where D is the baseline of the pyramid, that's the data. We all have data. Every agency, department, and so on has data, right? So it's an asset. And if you don't believe that data is an asset, think about all the unicorn companies like Google, which is now a verb, right? I Googled Tom Hines, right? I could say that and you'd know what I mean. You talk about Facebook, all of our data that we've given that. You think about Uber, think about all the unicorn companies, all based on data as a huge, tremendous asset. So think about how much data we have as federal agencies, and whatever our mission is, to convert question to answer, to help provide oversight, to de-risk things. If you're a regulator, to help, let's say, if you're healthcare, to help improve the nation's health posture, if you're defense, to help provide for the common defense according to the Constitution, etc. So I think these situations are very much an opportunity for us to look at and rethink how we do things, but enabled by this technology on that. What we're doing at GAO is that this is just a brief intro on STAA, the Science, Technology, Assessment, and Analytics team. So we do things, I mentioned GAO doing its oversight mission, but we also do what I think is also called the insight and the foresight. So think of it as 3 ites: oversight, which we're best known for that, but also insight and foresight. So oversight is, why is something not working, or how do we figure out what the problem is, diagnosing issues. It could be a program, project, department, agency, and so on. And so that's in the upper right-hand corner in terms of what we do in our classic auditing mission. But moreover than that, we need to also look at technology assessment, right? Let's start thinking about how do we help Congress prospectively, rather than just reacting to, oh, AI is coming, we're all gonna die, right? By the way, there's two sort of scare narratives on AI. I just want to say parenthetically. One is the death bot, the human apocalypse where the machine's taking over the singularity, right? But the other one that's even more real and pressing is what I call the job apocalypse. Okay, how are we all going to be out of work because the machines are going to come up and do everything for us? Again, way overstated. We're very far, if ever, from that. And I'll say a little bit more on AI. But we need to be able to use technology assessment to describe what the status of the technology is, what its implications are, and now we're in the business of offering to Congress options and policy to say, hey, depending on your policy goals, if you pursue this, here's the upside and the downside. And there's always a double-edged sword with technologies. And scientists, by the way, don't say infinitives like always and never lightly, okay? But it is true, always technologies have a double-edged sword narrative, right? What's the blessing of the internet? It's open. What's the curse of the internet? It's open, right? We're all being bit by that. We all have gone through all the hacks. It's now, it's so pervasive, we're just used to this sort of thing. So we're trying to, in our team with foresight, is really this mission, to provide some critical foresight on these emerging technologies and what they mean. Now down to the lower left, engineering sciences is just a lot of what's called the insight type work. This is project controls. So as GAO does its audits or its oversight type work, particularly if you're looking at a weapon system, a first of a kind advanced facility in the Department of Energy, any sort of project or program or whatever, a homeland security system, whatever, we need to have best practices, and we literally have written the book in this team on best practices for life cycle cost estimating, schedule risk analysis, technology readiness assessment, and now agile software development. Okay, so all these things, because GAO has a unique position seeing things as a pattern, but the insight is there, and this is really, in one sense, is a data analytic team. So looking at all these data, like how credible is the cost estimate for this advanced weapon system, right? How mature is this technology really if it's going through, in DoD language, it's going through milestone B and the numbers get large, right? And we're going to place large bets on expensive systems that drive costs and so on. So that's this group down in the lower left. And then finally here I'm going to be dwelling on the Innovation Lab, because this is GAO's engine for modernization and change for itself, as well as sharing insight and practices on technology and their implications and things across the government. So this is important because the Innovation Lab really is looking at the ABCDs that I mentioned before, right? Except now we're doing it for ourselves. We just have to do it. We're in that, again, DIKW pyramid, where again, data is the baseline, but now the purpose of the lab is in the data analytics conversation, and even the AI machine learning, is to try and say, how do we convert that data, the D, and add value up and now convert that to information, okay? Which machines can now give us a lot of information, but now really where the humans come in, this is why I would assert it's an augmentation of human intelligence, it always will be, is it moves up to the knowledge, the K value chain, and then ultimately what we want, whether it's ourselves in our own operations, our programs, departments, projects, agencies, and so on, we want to get to the W, which is wisdom. How do we have wisdom in our government, in our operations? And so the Innovation Lab is meant to bring about this clarity of mission, this toward modernization, looking at the ABCDs of things, and it's doing that in several ways. One is a continuous knowledge management in terms of addressing interconnected, persistent challenges. A lot of the hard part of this operation, this business innovation, is just defining the problem, like really. Right? Because I can go and talk to anyone at GAO, I can talk to folks at agencies, operators, wherever, and I can hear pain points. The key thing is, can we really get down to, okay, that's a pain point, what is driving that? How do I diagnose that problem? Because then I may be able to pull out things or tools from the ABCD toolbox and figure out what might be done in this particular case. Okay, so knowledge management, thinking of data as an asset, because that data are the oil that are going to drive up, hopefully, for us to move in from the data to the information to the knowledge to the wisdom. We also want to be user-centric. Okay, so part of this is we're not just there to put out a product for its own sake. We're there to help our government be a better government, to be a better expression of itself, and to help whoever is working in that. You could be a first responder, emergency personnel. Right? You could be a military officer in the field. You could be a caregiver or a nurse at the bedside, let's say, and you could be a regulator. You want to find out what the risks are and how to manage that. But the key thing is we want to have user centricity in what we do. So defining the problem, thinking about knowledge management, and then being user-centric are there. Then we want to have prospective thinking in how do we think about oversight challenges. Because again, GAO gets asked to do a lot of question to answer conversion. So how do we better do that with more insight, quicker, cheaper, more incisive, better for the country? That's really what we're going to, but again, thinking in a foresight way. And then for the Innovation Lab, this is very important, and I would say this is a key best practice for anyone who wants to be in the business. I will just say, even if you don't want to, you should. You need to have a space, whatever your mission is, to have innovation, and you need to have a space to de-risk. So how do you create an environment to be able to ask questions? If you understand the problem, if you have a knowledge management approach and you want to go up the DIKW, how do you get around to where you actually test things out? Because you have to have a space to do it. Right? When I, years ago, went to buy a car, actually I'm a minivan dad, I had younger kids, I wanted to have all the safety features, right? I went on the car lot and I looked at the MSRP, the sticker on the window, and on that window sticker it has stars, okay? So who knows what the stars are? It's a safety rating, right? Is that done by the manufacturer? When I went to that van, did the manufacturer say, yes, I'm patting myself on the back, I give myself 5 stars? No. It's an independent regulator, right? And what happened is the regulator was there to prove, it's called NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. It was literally smashing up vehicles to make sure that it earned that independent of the manufacturer. Because the manufacturer's incentive is always going to say, yeah, we're the best. And yet you had some accountability function in that. They had a way to de-risk the van in this case, so that I can make an informed decision using now knowledge and wisdom to say, okay, this has 5 stars, I might be willing to pay a little bit more money than the one that has 4. And I think it's hard to probably survive in this market on 3, right? But the point is that you have data that turns into information and wisdom for things. So how do we think about that in terms of de-risking things offline of the mission space whenever we're thinking about modernization? And so I think at the core of this is agile operations. That's a word that feels and means like a lot of things to a lot of people, but this is really thinking like an engineer. How do you quickly iterate? How do you think about, what do we think the problem is? Okay, it's that, and then you start going down the path, say, no, it's not that. We need to tweak and adjust and do things. And so it's the small micro corrections that come about in the operation of your team to do things. You need to have an openness to this, right? It's not a goal of ours to have our innovation lab be locked into a single vendor and pay it one large check. I don't endorse that idea. I think there are key things from the market that need to be leveraged, because there's a lot of smart people out in the market doing a lot of smart things, but you have to have things tied to your mission, and you know your mission, but you need to make sure that you have a general sense of openness in terms of how you bring technology in, as well as the openness of your data. You also want to scale, because that's part of the opportunity. A lot of the big data, as it's called, is big. It's going to be large and unstructured, and that's where cloud comes in as enabling technology. You have a lot of stuff, but I think a lot of the gold in it is going to be, what can you do? How can you compute on that stuff? And we really are, in today's augmented intelligence world, we're shifting from, I would call a data analysis, which are static, linear, statistical regressions, okay, snapshots, if you will, of data, which have served us to a certain extent, but now we're moving into a dynamic, large-scale, often nonlinear regression, doing statistics that are weird and we don't understand why or how, and yet they're doing incredible things and they're coming out. And so one of the key things we care about in the Innovation Lab for ourselves, and as GAO does its oversight on agencies, departments, programs, projects that might use things like AI, is accountability or explainability in that. And there's a huge amount of work and research that needs to be done in this area to cover that. But again, experimentation is going to be key. You get that de-risking through an agile, open, scalable, and then lastly, the secure piece. Security is easy to say, easy to conceptualize, but hard to do. And so we really do need to figure out, like in technologies, cloud, for example, the other day, I mentioned how blockchain had some weaknesses based upon the hype cycle. You'd think it was all perfect. It's not. So you have to think through that. Cloud's the same way. We started to hear about hacks of cloud systems, and so we've got to get our game up on that. It's not perfect just to push it to the cloud and check the box and say we're done. Right? Let's not put our secretaries or department heads and things like that in a position on Capitol Hill when they're saying, what were you doing with your data? We really do need to collectively work on that, and so GAO will be doing that. So all I'll say is that at this point, there's incredible opportunities in this space. I think, again, thinking in a convergent way, thinking prospectively, thinking in an agile type manner is the way to go. I think every one of you have the opportunity to do that, and I think now is the time to embrace that. So regardless of where you are, you can get started, even with the smallest thing. I'll just close with how to get started. The godfather, I would say, of a lot of data analytics, Mike Flowers, was once a staffer on Capitol Hill under Senator Lieberman doing a lot of oversight. But he went to the green zone in Iraq and learned how to allocate and collate a lot of data and come out with insights to get, the mission was to get the ambassador from point A to point B, and at that time a very IED-ridden zone. And he writes about that story about how he took that to when he started working for then Mayor Michael Bloomberg of New York City. How do we use data analytics to start answering questions? But he started with a penny saver ad with a 22-year-old young lady armed with an Excel spreadsheet. And they started to put things together in New York City, which is like a microcosm of the federal government, 240 different databases, but started to ask questions and doing the same thing we're doing in the Innovation Lab. You can start small, is the point. And it build on those success, start with the smaller problems, defining those things, building a disciplined process to sort and triage those, and then moving forward. There is incredible opportunity at this time and in this place. And with that, I'll close. Thank you all for your time. Thanks again to the organizers. Look forward to the rest of today's discussions. It's nice to see you all. Thank you.